talk about an interesting comment that was made by Chris Smith on Sky News. I get so excited when Sky News guys get it so wrong. It's interesting how the right-wing media now are doing all that they can to have a shot at Daniel Andrews because there's an election, and also Albanese and the Labor Party whenever they bloody well can. And in this particular instance, it's interesting to note how Chris Smith has had a shot at Albo, and according to the paper today, had it so wrong. So let's hear what Chris has to say.
Be a shocking international diplomat. I can guarantee you that his Foreign Minister Penny Wong, who's remained at home this week, she's not in Cambodia, would be furious. Here he was flying off to Cambodia for the first of 4 different international summits, and on the brink of finally getting a meeting with the Chinese president, he drops the ball cold. What must have been one of his worst brain snaps ever. The Prime Minister tries to flex his muscles and put a qualifier in the way of this long-awaited meeting. He wanted China to lift all their subsidies and bans on Australian produce before he would take such a meeting.
Next month does mark 50 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries. For the relationship to return to normal, what would Australia like China to do?
Well, firstly, to lift its economic sanctions. They total some $20 billion. They're not in Australia's interests, but it's also not in the interests of China.
Right, so that's what needs to be done. They need to lift the sanctions. So the Chinese leadership is likely to do as Albo says.
I just think this is quite interesting because Albo's simply saying what would be ideal and what is Australia's policy in relation to all of this. And he isn't saying this is something he's going to fight with the Chinese over. This is simply what he would prefer to happen. But Chris, with mouth wide open as he is right now, simply tries to have a dig at Albanese without any much substance to it whatsoever.
Lose face entirely, reverse their harsh and comprehensive bans and subsidies on Aussie produce. As if Albo. What was he thinking? After all the headway they were making with China, mostly via some very dedicated hard work from Penny Wong, Albo says that as he's about to fly out. And sure enough, what happened? The Chinese president is keeping Anthony Albanese guessing, omitting the Prime Minister from a list of leaders he'll meet during the first 2 high-powered summits.
This just gives us an idea as to how wrong the press can get it all, as I will demonstrate to you in just a moment.
She will hold a meeting with US President Joe Biden tomorrow at the G20 summit in Bali. That'll be the first in 2 years. All eyes will be on that. He'll also hold bilateral meetings with the French president, the Argentinian president, and the African Union chair. But no Albo.
Well, I hope it's likely. You know, obviously continuing dialogue is important.
I just think this is so interesting how they've got the wrong person with the wrong Tanya. This is not Tanya Plibersek. I want you to know that.
Particularly with China, we would welcome that.
Well, I think it's
hello, this is
fair enough comment from Penny to say that China, even if in its own words, in its own description of its role in the world, has certainly changed.
Okay, so that's the I guess that's the all that we need to say necessarily about that part of the dispute, about what Albo said and being dismissed by the Chinese, giving us the impression that Chinese will have nothing to do with Albanese now that he's made that rash statement about imports and exports and our trade in general. And then we go to the article in The Australian, which came out today, which I found quite fascinating because it seems to take a completely different perspective. Now, both of these organisations are Murdoch Press, so who knows what in the hell they've been told to say. However, it is interesting to see that things might be a little bit more different than what Chris was trying to convince us on Sky News, because it says here that Anthony Albanese breaks ice with China. Well, that wasn't quite the message I thought that we were Chris Smith was trying to convey on Sky News. In fact, it says here, not he, it says Anthony Albanese has become the first Australian Prime Minister in 3 years to speak face-to-face to a Chinese leader. In 3 years. I wonder who the other leader was. Now, let me think for a moment. The other leader. It might have been Scott Morrison, in fact, that was hanging around at that time, and he didn't have a chat to any of these leaders either. After Premier Lee sought him out at the Asian Summit in Cambodia, signaling a likely meeting with President Xi in Bali this week. The 4-minute exchange came as US President Joe Biden consulted with key allies, including the Prime Minister. Well, he seems to be in the loop somehow, which is a bit distressing if you're a Sky News pundit, I guess. And the leaders of South Korea and Japan ahead of his bilateral meeting with Mr. Xi on Monday evening. Mr. Biden will seek assurances from the Chinese leader over key security issues, including the fall of Taiwan, Ukraine, and involvement in Cambodian naval base. Mr. Albanese said his encounter with Mr. Lee at the Asian Gala was constructive and very positive, with discussions focused on the upcoming 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the countries. So it seems to me that the relationship and that building of that relationship has meant that he's actually got a meeting geared up for tonight with with the Chinese leader. In an unscheduled 40-minute meeting between Mr. Albanese and Mr. Biden, the two leaders discussed the AUKUS Pact and a potential address to a joint sitting of Parliament, with the President visits Australia next year for a Quad leaders meeting. So I guess my point is that the right wing, and Sky News in particular, would like to see Albanese taking a kick in the arse when it comes to international affairs. Penny Wong has done a fabulous job in wandering around to the Pacific Islands, trying to gin up some support and offering some money where possible to help to combat the Chinese influence in the Pacific region. And it looks like that Albo's doing the right thing and building his relationships in Cambodia so that he can meet up with the Chinese leader Xi later on tonight, apparently. So all is going well. So what in the hell was Sky News carrying on about? Who knows? And who really cares? Oh, well, I guess I care. But it's good to see that the pundits often get it wrong. And because they're so friggin' negative about most things, it's no wonder that they get it wrong. So, look, I hope that was helpful. It's good to know that there are some interesting dynamics happening at the international level with regard to the Australian Prime Minister, and it's fantastic to know that Sky News, on this occasion, just have got it so wrong.